In sports, there is a finite amount of time, and so often the end comes sooner than anyone involved can prepare for. And for us involved, we always hope for one more game, one more play, one more day. And too often those hopes go unfulfilled. But for the Hofstra Pride, after a special night in Hempstead last week, those hopes became reality. And that one more is right before us. The ride will continue in Chapel Hill. Good evening, folks. My name is Jack Sargent, joined here alongside Julia Kavanaugh, and it is Sweet 16 time for the Hofstra Pride. Julia, how are you doing tonight?
I'm feeling sweet, and that was a sweet little intro there. I was not expecting that, but Hofstra versus UNC in late November, what more could you ask for?
I don't know that you could ask for anything more, but this is... You can't sell the short. This is one of the biggest games in this program's history. I'm super pumped for it. You are. There's a lot to be excited for. Stephen Mason's going to be back. We'll get into more of that, but there's plenty of things to be excited about.
Absolutely. This is, I think, bar none, the best game in program history. It's so important for the program. It's just going to be a huge game in terms of boosting this program nationally in the spotlight, playing a extremely well-rounded UNC team, but we've talked about this on and off before the broadcast. This is going to be a very well-matched game.
Absolutely, and if we flash back a couple of years, this is not the first time the Hofstra Pride have been in the third round of the NCAA tournament. It's not the first ride for so many of the players on this team. This was a team who 2 years ago in 2021, they knocked off Penn State, a big win for them, and they went into the third round matchup against Pitt, and they came up short there, but this isn't, like I said, this isn't the first time for them, and it also feels like that this team is just a little bit different than that group that went to the Sweet 16 in 2021, and I was talking about this with our friend Dylan Brett on the locker room on Friday, and Dylan said that, you kind of see at points with teams that you're just happy to be there, but this team at this point, not just happy to be there. There's a purpose for this game.
Yeah, this team is extremely experienced compared to that 2021 team. And in terms of playing against, teams that are in the spotlight more often, Hofstra is getting used to the spotlight. They were nationally ranked for a long time throughout this year, and they come into this game number 14th ranked in the country. Yes, they're going against the number 3 team, but that does not say that this team is not used to being in the spotlight.
If anything, it says that this team and the culture that they've built around it and Richard Nuttall has put together for this team, if anything, it just says that work has come to fruition. This is the first time in program history that they got a first round bye. They were a nationally ranked seed in the NCAA tournament, and they're coming off of a really, really good game against Yale.
Absolutely. Hofstra beating Yale 2-0, and last Sunday the Tar Heels beat Memphis 2-0, so both earning themselves 2-0 victories in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Now moving on to the Sweet 16. This is the first ever meeting between the two programs. Winner goes to the Elite Eight. I mean, there's a lot at stake here, but let's not forget that Hofstra is a team that is extremely well-rounded, and so is North Carolina. So in terms of this matchup, I'm looking at the defense. Yeah,
and very quickly, before we get into talking about Hofstra, I do just want to briefly mention that the winner of this game will take on Oregon State. How about that Oregon State Beavers team? Concede 1 goal, rattle off 7 straight. Looked like Germany against Brazil in 2014.
Yeah, unbelievable. A 7-1 victory. That's kind of unheard of at this point in the year, and especially they've been on a very good run, unranked in the tournament, so they've played one more game than both of these teams.
Well, and you said defense, and how about that defense missing their captain, one of the anchors of this team against Yale, Stephen Mason, and they recovered from that, rebounded from that so well against Yale.
That was huge. I know we were both there, you were on the call, but that game, to be able to get a shutout against a relatively good Yale team is so big for this team's confidence, and especially for Stephen Mason as a senior, not having his last game be one that he had to watch on the sidelines for, and I know he's going to be coming out firing tonight.
Absolutely, and I'm chuckling because of a certain video that I showed you before we went on air talking about his mindset coming into this game, but you cannot talk about the Hofstra Pride in 2023 and not talk about the man from England, Elliot Goldthorpe, the man against Monmouth, the man against Yale, the man of the year.
Yeah. The CAA Player of the Year. I mean, he has been an absolute force to be reckoned with on this Hofstra team. 8 goals, 14 assists, 30 points on the year. But don't forget about his line mate up front, Ryan Carmichael, 16 goals, 4 assists on the year. He had the only 2 against Yale. So those 2 up front are going to have to be one of the driving forces that Hofstra is going to need to see today.
And we'll mention that Ryan Carmichael, 16 goals this season, surpasses his career high total from that 2021 season. 15, he could potentially not be done yet today, but I just want to highlight the connection that Elliot Goldthorpe and Ryan Carmichael have with each other, because they have been, especially in these last few games, they have been playing so well off of each other, really so much this year, but it has been such a factor as to the success that this team has had this year.
Yeah, they seem to be linking up every game. Whether or not it actually leads to anything is to be said, but every single game you seem to be finding Goldthorpe looking for Carmichael or vice versa, and it comes from the back, which is a point that I just made a few seconds ago about this team's defense, especially with Pearson Fuso being CAA tournament most outstanding player. He has been such an unsung hero on this team, in my opinion, and I'm really glad that he was getting the recognition he deserved in the CAA championship game.
Yeah, and I want to also mention a player that you cannot go without mentioning, and I think you know who I'm going to say, but the anchor between the pipes, Wessel Spiel. This team, the Hofstra Pride, and some of this credit goes to the defense, but the Hofstra Pride have not allowed a non-penalty goal we're getting close to a month's time. That is incredible.
Oh my goodness. I mean, Wessel Spiel, to put it lightly, is one of the best goaltenders I have ever seen live. And I played goalkeeper in my day, and I know how tough it is to be in between those pipes. But these players are coming at him. You know, Hofstra has played some really incredible opponents. They played Virginia earlier in the year and, New Hampshire, teams that are ranked higher than them currently in the country. And he played incredibly. And I'm looking for him to really continue his streak tonight. And hopefully he's locked in, because I know that North Carolina is going to be coming out firing.
Yeah, and before we get into talking about this game, I do just want to highlight the heroics that he had, because we all remember Stephen Mason gets the second yellow, he gets sent off, and it's just really tough to stop a penalty after that kind of situation. With all the emotion that was there, Wessel actually got a yellow on that sequence, so just a little bit to add to that. But when things potentially could have come off the rails for the Hofstra Pride, he bore down. He had some incredible saves at the back half of regulation and in extra time against Monmouth, which got the Hofstra Pride the CAA title and the national seed.
Absolutely. And speaking of goalkeepers, goalkeeper Andrew Cortez of North Carolina ranks first in the country in save percentage at 88.5% and second in goals against average at .47. So it's going to be a matchup of incredible goalkeepers tonight.
Yeah, incredible goalkeepers, and you're going to see the defense for the Hofstra Pride be put to the test tonight. And we'll mention North Carolina coming off of that 2-0 win against Memphis. They also got a first-round bye like the Hofstra Pride did. But they have some common opponents with the Hofstra Pride. So they lost to Virginia, who just had their tournament run ended by Indiana, but Virginia. West Virginia's still going on. Virginia, number 7 nationally ranked team in this NCAA tournament. They lost to Indiana today, but North Carolina dropped their match to Virginia, and then some CAA opponents as well. They faced William and Mary, who they played to a scoreless draw, and then they beat Elon 2-0 on October 3rd, team that the Hofstra Pride beat 3-0.
Yeah, and I want to highlight that Virginia game as well, because Hofstra drew against Virginia, but let me just say they definitely could have won that game. And to see that North Carolina actually lost to them, being an ACC opponent, I don't know. I mean, I look at that game and I'm like, what went wrong there? Because a few things went wrong for Hofstra, that's for sure, but it still ended up being a draw. So in terms of, these common opponents, I think that's a big thing that probably Coach Nuttall was looking at during the week.
Well, and the other thing about Hofstra and you can't say common opponents with all of these teams, but similarly ranked talent level teams to a team like this North Carolina team. Hofstra faced New Hampshire, who they're still riding on in the tournament. They're going to be playing alongside of us today, but Hofstra, when you play the gauntlet of an out-of-conference schedule that the Hofstra Pride played this season, it prepares you so much for a game like this.
Absolutely, and especially with Hofstra and North Carolina coming up with similar results in almost every single one of the common opponent games is very much eye-opening, because I feel like a lot of people across the country are looking at this and they're saying, oh, North Carolina, powerhouse, Hofstra, where even is Hofstra? But we, as we obviously go to Hofstra, are looking at this team and we're like, hey, this team is different. This team is different, and this North Carolina team is going to have to seriously watch their backs, because I know they're coming with a vengeance.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like, you see 3-14, and we're conditioned so much to March Madness and like those big numbers. There's not 64 teams in this tournament this year. Like, this Hofstra is a lot closer. Now, I'm not saying that Hofstra is favored to win this game, but Hofstra is a lot closer to North Carolina than that 11 number difference in seeding would suggest.
Absolutely, and especially in the March Madness basketball tournament, every team gets a seed. Every team gets a number next to their name when they're in it. So to even have a number in this tournament to get a first-round bye is huge. And now that they're moving on, this is the Sweet 16. There's a chance at the Elite 8 for this Hofstra team, and I know that everybody on this campus is buzzing, more excited than ever, coming back from Thanksgiving break, hoping to still see this Pride team moving along in the national championship.
Yeah, and like I said this on the locker room on Friday, things really seem to be clicking for this team, especially with the way that they held on against Monmouth in the CAA title game. That now the matchup against Yale was, it's odd to say this about the second round of an NCAA tournament game, but the matchup against Yale was honestly easier than the game against Monmouth was.
That game was, I mean, I was there, you were on the call. It was a little boring. Yale did nothing. Yale was like they were still sleeping on the bus. But I think that was good for Hofstra. They had a long break to get ready for that game, and it showed. They were firing on all cylinders, and I'm hoping that they can keep that going tonight.
Yeah, and momentum is always a fickle thing in sports, but I tend to say if you're coming off of a game where you played well, especially when you have the kind of moral victory that Hofstra had, scoring the shutout while missing your captain and one of your defensive anchors, that is so huge. Yeah. So I will pose the question to you. The Hofstra Pride are able to come out, punch with North Carolina, and be in this game with them. Who is the key?
It's got to be Elliot Goldthorpe. I don't know if there is another answer if Hofstra is going to make this game interesting on the offensive end, but I am thinking that this is going to be sort of a low-scoring game, obviously a defensive battle, but I got to go with the man. Elliot Goldthorpe.
Absolutely. And I fully agree with you. I don't think, and I truly believe that this is not going to be a Hofstra goes out there and gets handled by North Carolina like they got handled by Pitt in 2021. I think that this is a different team. And I agree with you. It's going to be those forwards, Elliot Goldthorpe, it's going to be Elliot Goldthorpe and Ryan Carmichael. And if the Hofstra Pride are to pull this off, it's going to be one of those key moments that we've seen so many times this season of Elliot Goldthorpe setting up Ryan Carmichael.
Absolutely, and they've been clinical all year. So looking forward to this one. In a few minutes, we're going to send it down to Jack Lydon and Anthony Bosch, and they're going to have you for the call tonight. But Jack, any final thoughts?
I was just going to say, I'll throw it back to you just really quickly. Yeah. UNC, they're the 3 seed. They're supposed to win this game. If they do what they're supposed to do, who is it for them?
I think it's going to have to be the keeper. I mean, although I will say this, they have a great weapons on offense, but yeah, it's going to have to be the keeper.
Yeah, you mentioned, and I don't know if you said this on air yet or if it's just blending with the conversation that we had before we went on air, but number one ranked in the nation in save percentage. So safe to say with these two keepers, goals are going to be few and far between, hard to come by today. But I'm excited. You're excited. This one should be a good one. Very quickly, we will send it over to the lads, Jack Lydon and Anthony Basha, who will have the call for you on the other side of the legal ID. You're listening to Hofstra Men's Soccer on 88.7 FM WRHU. Thanks, lads. And one thing that I was saying to myself coming into this game was North Carolina is a different kettle of fish than Yale and Monmouth. But you know what, Julia? The Hofstra Pride came to play today.
Yeah, they did. Coming out firing. 18 minutes in, Teddy Baker getting one for the Pride. He's got 2 shots on goal. What more could you ask for a player that has been relatively quiet in this season? And you know what? I'm rocking with Rock. My boy Rock Carlos, he had a prime opportunity there. Unfortunately, couldn't finish, but he's a firecracker from Barcelona, and we love him here in Hempstead. And he's been a player that I've been looking at in this first half for sure.
Well, you know who else we talked so much about in the pregame?
Who?
Elliot Goldthorpe
Oh.
and Ryan Carmichael.
Yeah, they came out to play, and thank gosh for it, because as we mentioned, they are two of the absolute staples in this Hofstra lineup. Elliot coming out with an assist and a shot on goal. Ryan's got a goal and an assist. So really, really nice play from them so far. And Ryan Carmichael, that goal, he was just spying down the North Carolina defense, took it away, and was able to finish on the top goalkeeper in the country. What more could you ask for?
Well, Julia, you're talking about spies right here. This isn't football. This is soccer.
True.
But I mean, Ryan Carmichael just doing what he's done so much this season on the assist for the Teddy Baker goal. So making his presence known in two fashions in the score sheet right now. And it hasn't been perfect for the Hofstra Pride. We'll talk about things that they can improve on, but you're in front at halftime against UNC.
Yeah, seriously. And they only had one shot on goal. Yes, it was a goal, but lockdown defense, as I mentioned in the pregame, Hofstra has played really solidly in sort of making North Carolina nervous when they're on the ball. So what I mean is, anytime they're coming down the field, they might have possession, but Hofstra's not going to let them get anything from it. Their shots have been way off target, and I think that they can relax a little bit, not saying relax to the point where they're going to play defensive-minded, because you're against a 3 seed. You got to keep the hammer down. But you have to realize, okay, we can actually, we're meant to be here.
And the other thing, I'll talk about that lockdown. UNC only had one corner in this half. And on that one corner, they played it to no one. And Hofstra did a really good job of not allowing them to get out with it on that corner.
It landed outside the 18. I'd let them take corners if that's what they're going to do all day long. So in terms of Hofstra's play right now, I would say it has been extremely, extremely solid. There have been quite a few unforced errors and lots of turnovers, but you're sitting up 2-1 right now on the number 3 team in the country. Keep playing the way you're playing.
And we'll talk about some of the things that they can do better on. The biggest thing for me, and I know you'll talk about something that you have, but my biggest thing is on balls that are around half field. Hofstra is leaving the wings, and specifically that back, if we're facing it from the broadcast side, that back right-hand corner wing, it's on the far side of the field. There's been, I think, 4 or 5 times where North Carolina has played the ball down there. They've played it, and it's been into open space. So Hofstra has been able to recover and get a defender back there, but there's no one to receive the initial ball on that. There's a lot of open turf on that, and I feel like that's something that could potentially bite Hofstra if UNC is able to, at least have a player down there who gets to the ball at around the same point of a Hofstra player and set up a kind of open give and go pass there. That's the big thing for me that I look at and I say, that needs to be cleaned up, because I could see bad things resulting from that.
Yeah, and totally going along with that, I have 2 things. And one is Wessel Spiel. Sorry. Wow. Totally blanked on the name there. I don't know how I could do that. But Wessel Spiel is playing very far up towards the front post when North Carolina is getting towards the corners. And what bit him on the goal was that he was not deep enough in his net towards the far post to recover towards the cross. So for me, he's got to play a little smarter in terms of having that IQ of knowing that there is going to be somebody near the back post that could potentially get beat by North Carolina offensive player. And then my second thing is Hofstra in the midfield. They haven't had that much clean possession in the midfield. They've given up a ton of balls in the midfield and winning 50-50s and sort of just keeping it, play it back if you need to, let it go around the back line, bring it back up, but don't force anything. And that's what's creating these unforced errors that we're seeing in the first half.
Well, we'll go back to one of the positives for this team. Obviously the 2 goals, and they had 4 shots on goal. And what's your favorite thing to say about soccer, which is so important to getting victories?
Early and often. And that's exactly what Hofstra was doing in this first half. As you just said, 4 shots on goal to UNC's 1. That's fantastic coming from these 2 very highly ranked teams in the country.
And I'll ask you this question, and I don't want to be the peacock raising the feathers here, but is it possible that UNC may be looking at how tough Hofstra has come out, because they came out the gate absolutely clicking here? And is it possible that UNC might be a touch surprised at how tough Hofstra's playing them?
Possibly. And I don't want to speculate here saying that UNC was like, oh, who are these guys? We're going to take them lightly. No. Your mindset, this is the NCAA tournament. There's no way around that. I mean, there's a chance at the Elite Eight on the line. So I'm not going to say that North Carolina is playing them lightly. I just think they're a little surprised at how explosive Hofstra has been.
Absolutely. And, I don't want to obviously give the impression of being a Hofstra broadcaster here that's trying to smack talk North Carolina with a whole half of soccer left to go. But that was something, and I'm glad that you phrased it that way, because that was something that I was thinking to myself a little bit is it possible that maybe there's just a little bit of surprise that Hofstra is as tough on them as they are? But, I mean, this is about, again, Wessel probably could have executed that goal a little bit better, and you touched on that. But this is about the best case scenario that you could draw up for Hofstra in the first half against North Carolina.
This is definitely where they wanted to be. And don't get us wrong, we did see a little bit of frustration after that first goal, but it was bounce back time. And I think the boys knew that for sure because, I mean, when Ryan scored the second goal, it was a new life in this team. They didn't let North Carolina get any opportunities anywhere. So in terms of this second half, for me, I'm looking at obviously the play in the midfield, but also how the team is just having their chemistry work together. And
that's something that I wanted to ask you, because we were talking a little bit during the game about this, and how important is it for Hofstra to keep, not get frustrated with each other? That specifically that goal, we saw some emotions there, but it's not, panic time. You're not deep in the second half game, giving up a tying goal. There's still plenty of soccer left to play. They give that goal up, and it's like, okay, well, and Hofstra kind of had this mindset, okay, we'll go get it back.
I don't think there's going to be any time in this game where Hofstra's going to need to hit the panic button. Based on the way that they're playing right now, based on the score right now, I, in my opinion, do not think they really need to change too much. I think they need to stay hungry, and I think they need to, get on the board more and keep North Carolina off the board. But speaking of which, there are two other games going on right now in the NCAA tournament. Clemson, the 9 seed, versus New Hampshire, the 8 seed. They're sitting at 0-0, just about 8 minutes away from halftime. And Western Michigan and the number 2 seed Notre Dame are also knotted at 0-0. So the only game with a score right now, the number 3 seed North Carolina won, and the Hofstra Pride, the number 14 seed with 2. So that's not something we thought was going to happen in the pregame, but hey, we're sitting here at halftime with 3 goals on the board.
And we thought that goals were going to be so tough to come by, but that UNH-Clemson game, specifically for the UNH factor, is something that I am so fascinated by to see because of the game that Hofstra played against UNH.
Yeah, Clemson, their women's team getting their first ever bid into the Women's College Cup, and New Hampshire obviously played Hofstra earlier in the year. That was a great game. New Hampshire, kind of their only sport that's actually good, and they're very good at that. So should be a very interesting game to see the highlights of after the fact, but right now, this Hofstra-North Carolina game is definitely the most exciting in terms of the scoreboard.
Well, listen, you knew in this game your special players were going to have to be special, and Ryan Carmichael so far answered the call, set up the goal for Teddy Baker, put his own goal in. Elliot Goldthorpe doing his job, doing what he's been doing with Ryan Carmichael all year, at risk of it just being the broken record of continue to run this back. Hofstra, they have 45 minutes left to last to move on to the Elite Eight against Oregon State. What are they going to have to do to see this out?
Honestly, I mean, Teddy Baker has 2 shots on goal. Rock Carlos has a shot, not on goal. Ryan Carmichael has a shot on goal. Elliot Goldthorpe has a shot on goal. That's great. You have 4 players that are really into this game right now in terms of getting balls at net. Just keep doing that. Try to get everybody involved that you can. I mean, Stephen Mason's been playing really well in his first minutes back after the red card, and this defense has been playing nicely. I mean, I'm not going to say they're perfect because they're obviously not, but I mean, they've been playing some of their best soccer of the year and peaking at the right time.
Yeah, and for UNC, they have not been able to get a whole lot going on offense, and it's been a little bit, I'm a little bit surprised to see by this, but at the same time, that's selling this defense short because this defense has played so well this year.
North Carolina, obviously an electric team throughout the year on offense, but Hofstra playing them really well, and that's not to say that UNC has not had any opportunities. They've obviously only had 1 shot on goal, and that led to a goal. But Alcock has 2 shots, Hewerman has a shot, and Vican has 2 shots, and Charles has 1 shot.
And one thing that we'll say, you're definitely, I can't say definitely because there's never definites 100% certainties in sport. but it's really difficult to imagine a scenario in which the Hofstra Pride hold this number 3 North Carolina team to one shot on goal in 45 minutes. UNC is certainly going to make their halftime adjustments. So it's more about, you don't have to hold them to no shots on goal, because you've got the players who can either block the shots, clear the ball, and you've got the man between the pipes who can save the ball. So it's about weathering those when it comes.
That's a really great way to put it, sort of weathering the Tar Heel storm, because you know it's going to come. And obviously their coach is going to be making halftime adjustments. But in terms of what this North Carolina team is going to need to do in the second half, that's press a little bit more. They haven't had so many, let's say, prime opportunities to do anything at net. And obviously Hofstra is smiling about that, because all year they've been doing that. But in terms of this North Carolina team, yeah, you're going to need to see a little bit more of them on the offensive end, because they've been playing a little bit timid.
And especially because, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, there have been those instances where in the wings, there's been an opportunity to get a little bit of space, and no one's been there for UNC. And as I've said, that's something that I could if the Pride continue to leave that open, you're inviting that opportunity for UNC to make you pay for that.
If you're going to see something change in this second half for Hofstra, what do you think it has to be?
I feel like you got to be a little bit tighter on some of the UNC players, because they have given a little bit. They've given UNC a little bit of space on some occasions. Now, not space close enough to goal to be able to menace Wessel Spiel, but at least allow chances to set up. And the other thing, I don't know how much we mentioned it, turnovers have been a little bit of an issue for the Hofstra Pride.
Absolutely. And for me, it's getting the support on the offensive third. Hofstra has had quite a few chances of where they have had the ball in their offensive third and no one is around. So when Hofstra gets the ball in their own offensive third, you want to see quite a few more players come forward and give them a chance to make something happen.
Well, we're going to take a short step aside for about 30 seconds and come back with a little bit more discussion before the second half. You're listening to Hofstra Men's Soccer on WRHU. And welcome back inside our WRHU studios here on this Sunday, November 26th, the end of Thanksgiving weekend, and we are just about set to get underway for the second half of action. Julia, final thoughts before we send it back over to the lads in the other studio.
Go Pride. What else can I say? It's 2-1 at halftime here, a chance at the Elite Eight on the line. That's all I can say.
Lads, take it away.